everybody. Let's see, I'm gonna do something here. 'Cause my seat feels like low. Anyway, uh, welcome back, everybody. I have two movie reviews to do today. One kind of like spur in the moment because I figure I might as well do it now while I'm going to be reviewing something else for the 4th of July month. But speaking of which, happy 4th of July, everybody. Hope you all are having like a grand old time. Uh, Not going to be putting out too much today because I just probably want to just relax a little bit, but I want to get my reviews out as much as I can today. Uh, but anyway, uh, today I'll be covering the Netflix movie Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. Now, in case you don't know, I reviewed, I think definitely I know I did the first movie, but I can't recall if I did like the second film early on in my movie review uh, channel. Let me take a quick look and see, because I should have done this a while ago, because I'm pretty sure like I done the first two films, but the second one I'm not too proud of because I think I was like nodding off partway through. Hold on a second here. No, I did the first one, uh, which you guys can definitely check out. Yeah, uh, probably want to do that one over. Maybe I'm not sure because I wasn't too confident because I had a lot to do. It's one of those movies that at least one of those projects that I covered for the channel that I wasn't too proud of because at that time it was early on, and I was I'm making excuses here, but it's just like I was just like taking care of so much stuff that exhaustion was pretty much catching up with me while I was trying to cover this. So I don't know. Maybe I should uh, redo that in a sense. I try not to redo the stuff that I already have covered uh, as best as I can, but maybe for Beverly Hills Cop, because it's one of my favorite Eddie Murphy films of all time, and I also want to cover the second and the third film. Uh, so, yeah, maybe. I'm not sure when. Maybe I'll put it on the docket for next July because there's not much 4th of July type of films I want to do, or at least I can think of. Usually it's maybe like military related type of content, but I don't know. I'll probably toss it in for next year. Uh, anyway, as a matter of fact, eh, I don't know. I'm on the fence about it. I don't know. We'll see. Uh, yeah, you know what? F it. F it. Axel F it. Uh, I'll probably just delete it. I'm not too uh strong on that anyway. But yeah, this is like a 40-year-old franchise at this point. Now, like I said, it's one of my favorite one of my favorite. I'm sorry, Eddie Murphy films of all time. Go ahead, take that off, and just I'll just redo the films. Uh, the first three films maybe next year. Anyway, uh, these are one of the movies that, well, let me try and get my thoughts together. I got a lot to say. Beverly Hills Cop should always be coming out in theaters. Now, the first one was at the height of Eddie Murphy's career. He was on top of the world with all the comedy shows, SNL. I'm pretty sure it was SNL. Uh, he was just like on a roll. I think the first movie he did was 48 Hours, which I've seen, but even though I enjoyed it, I think Beverly Hills Cop really set the tone, but it's one of my favorite films of all time. I've seen all the Beverly Hills Cop films. It was all came out on VHS that I've seen it because it was it was one of those 80s classic. And Axel F did like a good job reclaiming that ethos that is sorely missed because in the 70s and the 80s and better part in the 90s it was there was an appreciation of use of practical effects because CGI really was not, you know, didn't hit its stride until partway into the 90s, getting into the 2000s. Uh, for the most part, it been doing a good job if people wasn't cutting corners and taking their time. Like Jurassic Park, for example, still one of the best uses of CGI, top tier in my opinion, of best use of CGI mixed with practical effects uh, of all time. Which, by the way, I really would like to do like a Jurassic Park review at some point. Uh, but anyway, uh, and this movie it has been hanging on the shelf for a long time because Eddie Murphy always wanted to come back to this, only if he had like the right budget, the right story, and the appropriate director in order to push this through. Because he is Axel Foley. He is what makes Beverly Hills Cop work. So he had to sign off on this kind of thing. It's kind of the same way like how Christopher Reeve will always be synonymous with Superman, even though there's always been other people playing the character. But you know what I mean? Where it's like when you think of a particular character from a film, you think of this actor. And sometimes when you try to come back to a franchise years later since the previous sequel or the previous first movie, doesn't always work. I think there's few successes out of the many failures. This one, I argue, is a fair success. Now, it only just came out yesterday, and people already are just shooting its praises. Now, does it rise up to the same degree as the first one? No. But it's definitely like something we should have had gotten from the third film, because the third film was lackluster. Now, I say that, because I was smart enough to understand what the problems were. Although at the same time, I still found some enjoyment out of the third Beverly Hills Cop film. But it didn't give that same. I think it's falling in the trap of, it's family type of film. And it just, I don't know. It kind of lost its edge a bit. But this movie here is directed by Mark Malloy. Now, we got Eddie Murphy reprising his role as Axel Foley. We got a newcomer, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, as Detective Bobby Abbott. Kevin Bacon as Captain Cade Grant. Tyler Page as Jane Saunders, Axel Foley exchange daughter. Judge Reinhold reprises his role as Billy Rosewood, as well as John Ashton reprises his role as John Taggart, now the chief of Beverly Hills, chief of police of Beverly Hills. Paul Reiser as Axel's former partner, Jeffrey reprises his role here. Uh, Bronson Pinchot as Serge, and I love this character. He is so much fun. Every time he like he's one of my favorite returning characters from this franchise. I'm glad they brought him back because he's so much freaking fun, and he's definitely like a good best friend character. He became like quick best friends of Axel Foley. That he always like every time he's in the city, he always reconnect with Serge, and just like the whole dynamic is like, get the fuck out of here, no I cannot. It's like, oh my god, I love this character. He's so much fun, and these two get together is always I always have a ball when it's like the chemistry, like in terms of like friends, is always on point. Kudos to like Serge is like in terms of movie best friends, he is at the top. He is awesome. Anyway, uh, Axel is still on the beat in terms of being like a cop. He's like in the thick of it, and even though he's treading on thin water because he every time he gets into it when it comes to like taking on the bad guys and stuff like that, it causes like property damage and everything like that. Even though he would catch a bad guy, there's always some kind of property damage or some kind of rigmarole. And even though his friend Jeffrey is trying to explain to him, it's like, dude, like it's not the glory days anymore. Which I'm kind of glad they touched on it, but they don't harp on it like many other old school cop film, or at least cop films that harken to like the 80s and the 90s, where that kind of thing was like all the rage and so much fun, to be honest. But you'll think by after all these years, Axel would be like chief of police of Detroit by this point, because he got all these accolades over the years. Kind of the same way with like you think about Bruce Willis in the Die Hard films. You would think like his record, he should be like running at the police department by this point, but he's just like he prefers to be in the streets, in the thick of it. That's where he feels like he belongs. Uh, uh, but I like the nice touch. If you see in the background in Foley's office, you see like the picture of his old police captain. That hard-boiled, no-nonsense police chief, trope, which he was one of the best, in all honesty. And of course, the actor long since passed away, but I'm glad they still have, because I glad I picked up on it as I was like looking around in Foley's office, and you see like all these photographs of all the old friends that Foley met over the years through the films, and his old police captains like picture frames on the wall. It's nice little memorabilia in a sense of the Beverly Hills Cop franchise. Then you see his partner Jeffrey's few days from retirement, and he's like, he want to spend time with his grandchildren and things like that. And Foley is in a sense a fish out of water in a way where it's like this is a new age of police, a policing now, and essentially he would be considered like an old relic of the 80s. But it's not like hitting you over the head with it like, oh, he's like crap, the actor who played in the black actor who played in Lethal Weapon. Crap, what is his name? He getting too old for this crap kind of situation. I'm glad they ain't, talking about the same way with like the third Bad Boys film where they have to beat us over the head with the fact that our classic action stars, who for the most part are still virile to an extent, are like, complaining about how their joints are hurting now. It's like I'm glad they didn't bring that old chestnut up. But it also cannot ignore the fact that the way you pull things off that arguably wouldn't have fly back then, but was more excused, can't be excused nowadays. Definitely cannot be excused nowadays. Uh, Even though, like we seen, like we remember the first film, uh, Axel's boss, you know, uh, getting chewed out by like his bosses by the fact that the stunts that his subordinates are pulling on the streets that like you will arguably even back then would be fired, let alone suspended for the destruction caused just by trying to apprehend a suspect. Anyway, uh, we see in Beverly Hills that because after Jeffrey saying like you probably should speak to your daughter, like how long has it been since you last spoke with your daughter, and could mention about their estrangement, which is one of those tropes that this one played it well, but in most cases I kind of groan because the whole extrained child thing, because the dad is like all he put his job over the family, which in a lot of cases is bad, but it's like the fact that they always make the kid bitter against the parent when he it's like I kind of wish they like make the kid understanding, still feeling a little butthurt, but also reasonable enough to understand like my dad is a cop. His job is dangerous. He has to do certain things that, or at least make certain sacrifices, which they mentioned in the film, whereas like the job takes stuff from you sometimes. And what little you get, you appreciate more. But you always played the whole thing where like, oh, the kid is so bitter because like you drove our mom away, and like, oh, like you didn't spend time, or you missed my 10th birthday party. And it's like your dad is a cop that he has to, sometimes pull away from, or he's an FBI agent. He has to, do his due diligence, or he's working on a case that require his time. Not excusing it, but you should be able to understand it. And it's like a trope that kind of gets kind of grating in a way. Anyway, so we see in Beverly Hills that the daughter, who's a defense attorney, takes on a case pro bono for this kid who's locked up, who's been accused of murdering a cop. And she, looking at the case, realizing there's something occurred here that seems off. Then she gets nearly hurt by some sketchy fellas that's trying to scare her off the case. Then Billy calls up Axel to tell him about like he needs to go to Beverly Hills now, like the daughter's okay, but somebody try to scare her off. So the dad makes his way to Beverly Hills, and along that way Billy while trying to, because he's like a private detective now, he didn't like the red tape that was carrying on at the old precinct. So because Billy was always low key, like had like a Rambo type of attitude because he loves Rambo, and so he kind of like stylized his like I don't say morals, but it's like he idolizes him, so he gets like very like rebel attitude from time to time, despite his charming demeanor, and it's kind of sweet, charming demeanor. Uh, uh, but he ends up getting captured when he's trying to stake out a place. So now he's gone missing. Uh, as Axel goes to try to find like Billy at his uh, motel room, where he sees a bunch of dudes like searching through it, and classic Axel Foley, he comes in there like he's good moves, because like I'm glad they didn't lose that part of Axel Foley. This is his thing, where it's like he fakes it till you make kind of attitude, whereas like you know like who are you? What do you mean who am I? I'm a guy, like you've been sent up here to go help you guys out because you guys are taking too doggone long. It's like Beck sent you. No, LeBron James. Yeah, he sent me. And it's like, yes, I like that. That is classic Axel Foley. Is that little like Bugs Bunny attitude, where it's like you freaking part of the whole thing so you can gain. Hopefully, they spill some information to you, at least a little you can go on with while you're trying to search through it, and then they spot like, why is your face here with the guy we're looking for? I was like, that's not me. That's Wesley Snipes. You can say all of us look alike, kind of thing. And then of course he gets busted. He gets out of there, and he steals like uh, where those people that those officers that gives out tickets to cars. He steals one of their vehicles. It moves like a freaking golf cart. But they goes to this merry little chase. He gets busted by other female cops and taken to Beverly Hills, where he meets up with Bobby, and he goes over Axel's background information, and you get this cool rundown of his exploits from the first three films. And it's a slight little dig at the third film because, yeah, it wasn't as great as the first two, but it's like oh well, it looks like this one recently in the '90s wasn't so good. It's like you didn't do so good. It's like that kind of thing. It was kind of funny. So he meets up back with Taggart. Well, he's trying to find Taggart, but the daughter comes to bail him out of holding. And he knows that these two had like a relationship kind of thing. And I'm kind of glad that he didn't like behave like a overreacting parent. It just sounds like he just comes off with like a more of a curiosity. It's like, really, this guy kind of thing. And I'm glad they didn't play Bobby like some hippy dippy millennial that's like a beta dude. I'm like, no, he's like a stand up dude, and he gives pushback to Axel while Axel trying to pull his little stick. Bobby is like, look, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to play to my male insecurities and all this other stuff. It's not going to work. Please answer my questions, kind of thing. And I like that. It's like, it's one of those rare occasions because honestly, Bobby's kind of like us because we grew up with Axel Foley, and it's like, yeah, like I know what you're trying to pull. It's not going to work on me. Please answer my questions. Don't try to run a game on me. I get it. And I kind of like that because almost everybody else falls for Axel's stuff, and for the ones, somebody doesn't fall for it, and it's playing off of a little bit more charming, not like he's antagonistic with each other. They fall into place very well. I kind of wish we get a little bit more of why the daughter. I mean, they explain it, but we don't know who the mom is. I was kind of hoping that the mom would have been like the woman in the first film that they got it on at one point, and uh, they conceived a daughter or something. At least that would have been my head canon, because I liked the woman in the first film. She was like a great like potential love interest, but they didn't really lean into that, which is also equally uh, fine, especially for the time, because they always wanted this where a female co-lead is in the film. Almost always they have to, get with the main character. But I'm glad they didn't lean into that kind of thing. They just put off like, no, they're just good friends. But maybe like over time it became something more and they got it on. At least that's my head canon. We don't know who the mom is, and I kind of wish to get like a picture or something. But it would have been nothing if you kind of include who the mom was, or at least throw away, like have it a throwaway thing, like, oh, the mom was the woman in the first film, and that would have been cool. We don't need like a long drawn out little thing, or at the very least show us like a wedding picture or something. That'd have been dope, because those two had chemistry, some serious chemistry. It was fun to see them work together. And she got an attitude like she can hang with Axel's shenanigans and it won't take his shenanigans, but she also find it equally charming. But the daughter, is butthurt because the dad, not that he didn't make time for his daughter, but he kind of, in a way, took his work home with him, where he's like teaching her how to get out of a locked trunk or how to get out of handcuffs, or, handle herself with a gun, things like that, where she, at the time didn't appreciate it. She just went like a normal dad, and he didn't behave, I guess, like a normal dad. He seems like too busy trying to prepare her for the worst because of the job he's in, where he seems like almost the worst of the worst kind of people. And that kind of skewed his worldview when it comes to being a parent. Uh, so, of course, they go through this, mechanism about like, oh, I changed my last name to Saunders, which, matter of fact, Saunders is like probably like the mom's name. Wouldn't it have been like the mom's name? That was like the first. Let me check the first Beverly Hills Cop film. Uh, Inspector Todd. That was Axel's boss. No, no, Jenny. That was the girl's name from the first film. Jenny Summers, not Saunders. So that sucks. So whoever the lady's name that he got with probably had the last name Saunders. That sucks. Anyway, so uh, the father and daughter, work together to investigate the vehicle that her client was using, where it was caught, because he was supposed to be some kind of like he was like the nephew of some like Latin crime boss that was uh doing like a job where I guess supposed to be like the getaway driver or something. I don't know. Or well, not a getaway driver, but he's like he didn't know what he was getting into. I forget what was the situation, but he did not realize the severity of what he was getting into, where the cop that was murdered was like undercover, and he died uh, they got into some kind of car crash. The kid woke up, found the gun near him and the dead body of a cop, and everybody just assumed, oh, it was well planted. And so uh, the murder rap was landing on him, and so he's gonna be like potentially going on death row. But they go find the vehicle in the lot, and they notice there was like a hidden camera in the dashboard, and they notice they being followed. So while they was being followed, they stick the he found like the transmitter underneath her car. They put it on like a school bus so that way they can follow who they was following. Meanwhile, Bobby is following them, but they end up. Well, no, I'm getting ahead of myself. They realize, they was being followed, and they realize these guys worked for this guy Grant, who is a total fan of Axel Foley, because like he grew up in the '80s too, because it's Kevin Bacon here, and Axel really got his number because he notices the kind of the flashy shoes and the Rolex and stuff like that. It's like the sleazy '80s kind of villain, which is like always a treat to see those kind of things. And those guys that was following them works for Grant. So clearly he's the bad guy, which I'm glad they didn't kind of drag this out, because the audience would have quickly picked up on this. Like I said, this should have been played in the movie theaters. Everybody would have loved this film. Uh, so they ain't got nothing on him, but they pretty much trying to like read him in a sense. But he ended up reading them a bit. It's like causing these two to have more friction. Before they, track those guys down at this like lounge club, I really like this because, like I said, Axel's a product of his time, so his shtick is kind of like losing a bit of its like luster a bit, where when the things we have now they didn't have in the '80s, so you can easily fool people. Where he's trying to worm his way inside the building past this maitre d' or whoever, like those monitoring things on the inside, and it's like, oh, I'm the inspector. It's like, like, let me see your badge again, because normally people would probably ask that because he kind of flashed it a bit, which is a trope from the '80s and the '90s that always seemed to work because nobody really paid attention. They see like a badge and it's, a glimpse of an idea, and it's like, oh wow, it's like, sure, like, we'll listen, kind of thing, we'll do what you say, kind of thing. But he wasn't believing it. So the daughter comes in, knowing this is his daughter now, knowing like she has more official credentials, and she knows the name of the like the mayor, calls like the number and stuff like that. Like, oh, I can have this place shut down. Do you have like more than 85 people in this place? Like, oh, then let's count heads then, because if you don't, we'll have to shut your place down. And she points out to her dad, like, you're floundering. Knowing the fact that he taught her those skills is kind of fun, but the fact that he's kind of slipping a bit, she kind of picks up the slack, and I thought that was pretty dope. But anyway, it cause further friction, which is, of course, cliche. They got like the third act breakup kind of thing, but it isn't over heavy handed, which I appreciate. So, word gets back to Taggart, and of course, Taggart being Taggart, he, like he did with Billy, that kind of drove Billy away. The fact that he didn't have Billy's back, Axel had to question why he didn't like take, believing in him. It's like, dude, don't tell me you don't take, man. And of course, this offends Taggart, but it's just like, dude, why didn't you have my back, kind of thing? Because this is happened all, all happened after this, attempted ambush by Grant's men. Luckily, Bobby was following them, and he helped out, but it caused Bobby to get suspended and Axel getting thrown out. So Bobby and Axel worked together to find other information through Saunders' client's, family. His uncle was the leader of this kind of gang, and through him, they find out about this shipping yard where they know, like, oh, this has got to be where, because it turns out like Grant is getting involved into illegal shipping, exports, import kind of thing. But they get Bobby and Axel get arrested by Grant on some trumped up charges, knowing full well it's trumped up, but it doesn't matter to Grant because he just wants them in holding long enough for his people to get all this stuff need to be done, so there'll be nothing left for Axel to search through. It's all cleaned out, so nothing for him to go off on. But Axel cleverly escapes along with Bobby. They hijack a helicopter because they mentioned earlier how Bobby used to be a pilot, but he kind of washed out because he, was terrible at it. But he knows enough to like get off the ground. But this is where the practical effects use is incredible, where they actually used the helicopter and like flew real low because he couldn't like really get it uplifted. And it was kind of funny, where it's kind of funny car chase / copter chase, where it goes all the way to like Beverly Hills. It lands into this golf course where he sees Shooter McGavin out of all people shows up. Like, we don't know this guy name. We just assume it's going to be Shooter McGavin. So let's just call him Shooter McGavin. And it's kind of funny. So he took the golf cart to go to the shipping area where they find Billy and escape with him. But Grant kidnaps Axel's daughter, holding her hostage. So, because they was looking for this SD card with all from the recording from the undercover cop who was working for Grant, but was turning over a new leaf and trying to get the goods so he can get Grant arrested, but got busted and clipped. So they been searching for this SD card for this whole time and thinking like Billy had it the whole time, but Billy didn't because he was still looking for it himself, I guess. So of course Bobby, Axel, and Billy have the SD card, so they got to make a trade between it and Saunders. So they end up crashing into a bunch of cop cars because, they can't call in for help because, once it's suspended and the other doesn't work here, is out of jurisdiction. But they cause all this other destruction with other, cop cars and other cars. So they forcing a bunch of cops to follow them so they can have backup. Billy ends up calling, Billy and Axel ends up calling Taggart, who shows up to help with his classic shotgun. And they get into a shootout, which is awesome. And Axel jumps in front of a bullet meant for his daughter. And of course, the daughter still remember how to shoot, takes out Grant herself. And the movie ends with the father and daughter reconciling, and uh uh and that's where the movie ends. It's a fun movie, and it's like it doesn't. It's one of those movies where it has like a reasonable budget, and don't expect $1 billion like many other movies these days, or these studio heads these days, where they expect like every movie they crank out should be making like $1 billion, and that's like a mark for success. And you just be fine with the reasonable box office returns if you have reasonably put in like a budget, because you don't need $200 million for a basic cop film. You don't need $200 million for an Ant-Man film. It's like, or you don't need $200 million for, whatever. You know what I mean? You know what I'm driving at. It's like, know what the budget is, know what you need it for, and set the price. You don't ask for a obscene amount of money for like what's going on with the Blade, film that's trying to get off the ground with the MCU right now, because they're going through directors like Pez, where it's like, I'm not sure what's going on with the rewrites and, whoever behind the scenes, but it's like, it's a vampire film. The first Blade film didn't need to cost all that much, because it's just like a guy hunting vampires. Doesn't need like a crazy amount of CGI sky being bullcrap. Reasonable budget, and if you know what your the narrative is, the reasonable narrative that you want to write about, the characters are understood from the ground up as you wrote them properly, where they seem charming and funny and reasonable, and understood their motivations and all the other stuff. Reasonable budget, you'll get like a nice healthy return. And this movie, I wish it was coming out in theaters, but Netflix is fine too. It's fun, a great film. Is, like I said, not on the same degree as the first film. I argue it will be on the same area roughly as the second film. So all around great movie. But let me know in the comments below what you guys think of Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. Or they could have just, did something funny with like the Axel F or Axel 4 or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, all the actors are on point. Everybody was doing like a great job. Nobody was lacking, in any criteria. They all came to play. I kind of wish we see something more with the client, like see him getting released and thanking Saunders. I kind of wish Saunders changed her name back to Foley, even though the paperwork would have been like crazy, but showing the necessary components being arranged to change her name back to Foley, or something akin to that. And these two, Bobby and her, getting together, because the chemistry between these two is amazing. Kind of wish we get a little bit more. But beyond that, great film. It's like a solid B or B plus. This is a great film. Highly encourage you guys to go on Netflix, check out Axel F, and let me know what you guys think. I'll see you guys a little bit later as I'll cover my next movie for the 4th of July review month is Saving Private Ryan. So look forward to that. And after that, it'll be my review of Batman the Animated Series Season 2. So look forward to that. And I'll see you guys later. Take care.